The generation that was told, "Go outside, be back when the streetlights come on," is now being criticized for being too involved in their children's lives. If that sounds ironic, it is. And that irony explains almost everything about Generation X parents. If you were born in the late 1960s, the 1970s, or the early 1980s, you probably remember the sound of your own key turning in the front door. You remember stepping into a quiet house, dropping your backpack on the floor, and realizing that no one was home. Not because your parents didn't care, but because they were working. Often, both of them. And in large numbers for the first time in modern American history. Between 1970 and 1990, the percentage of mothers with children under 6 in the workforce rose dramatically. From roughly 37% to nearly 60%, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. That shift reshaped daily life. It created a generation of latchkey kids, children who let themselves in, made their own snacks, did their homework alone, and figured out how to fill the hours until dinner. At the time, it wasn't framed as a social experiment. It was just reality. A 2004 marketing study described Generation X as one of the least parented, least nurtured generations in modern U.S. history. That description wasn't meant as an insult, was simply an observation. Many Gen X kids were expected to manage their own problems early. If you got a bad grade, your parent probably didn't email the teacher. If you were fighting with a friend, your dad likely told you to work it out yourself. If you were bored, that was your problem to solve. You learned autonomy because you had to. That kind of independence leaves a mark. It builds competence and resourcefulness. It teaches you to tolerate discomfort. But it also teaches you something else, something quieter. Kai, it teaches you not to expect rescue. It teaches you to handle emotions privately. It can make you strong. It can also make you lonely. Fast forward to today, and many Gen X parents speak openly about how those early experiences still shape them. They are often surprisingly reflective about their own childhoods. They talk about being alone more than being supervised. They remember feeling capable, but also wondering whether anyone was really paying attention. So when they became parents, many of them made a quiet decision. My kids won't feel invisible. Gen X parents never intended to hover. They swore they wouldn't be overbearing, valuing the freedom they experienced growing up. They credited that freedom for their resilience and didn't want to raise fragile kids, believing in self-reliance. But something shifts when you hold your own newborn, a profound connection forming instantly. Or when your 7-year-old looks at you with a trust you once wished someone had offered you. The memory of walking into an empty house can rush back with surprising force. The memory of solving problems alone can suddenly feel less heroic and more heavy. And so, a particular style of parenting emerges from these experiences. Some observers nickname Gen X parents stealth fighter parents. They aren't usually hovering at every practice, micromanaging assignments, or intervening in every social conflict. Most of the time, they step back, letting their kids navigate minor drama and allowing mistakes. They believe in struggle as a teacher, fostering resilience. But when something truly matters, they are all in, fully present and engaged. If a situation crosses a line, like bullying or unfair treatment, they show up with intensity. If there's a real threat to their child's well-being, they act decisively. They may appear low-key day to day, but they are fiercely protective when it counts. This approach aligns closely with what developmental psychologists have long described as authoritative parenting. The concept was popularized by psychologist Diana Baumrind, who identified different parenting styles based on 2 core dimensions: responsiveness and demandingness. Responsiveness means warmth, being there, and truly understanding. Demandingness refers to expectations, structure, and boundaries. Authoritative parenting is high on both. It combines warmth with clear limits. It says, "I care about you deeply, and there are still rules." It differs from authoritarian parenting, which emphasizes strictness without much emotional support. It also differs from permissive parenting, which emphasizes warmth but sets few boundaries. Decades of developmental research have found consistent associations between authoritative parenting and positive outcomes. Children raised in this style tend to show higher self-esteem, better emotional regulation, stronger social skills, and lower levels of anxiety and depression. They often perform better academically and demonstrate stronger problem-solving abilities. There is no definitive large-scale study declaring that Gen X, as a whole, has adopted authoritative parenting. Generations are not monoliths, but when you listen to how many Gen X parents describe what they are trying to do, the pattern is striking. They talk about being present, but not suffocating. They talk about letting their kids struggle while making sure they are not alone in that struggle. Generations are not monoliths, but when you listen to how many Gen X parents describe what they are trying to do, the pattern is striking. They talk about being present, but not suffocating. They talk about setting boundaries while staying warm. They talk about letting their kids struggle while making sure they are not alone in that struggle. That balance reflects their own history. Gen X came of age during economic instability. Many graduated into recessions. They watched pensions disappear and job security erode. They saw a shift from stable corporate careers to layoffs and restructuring. They learned early that institutions were not always reliable. If you grow up understanding that the system might not catch you, you approach parenting differently. You cannot promise your child that everything will be stable. You cannot guarantee a clear career path or predictable retirement. So instead, you try to raise someone who can adapt, someone who can handle uncertainty, someone who can recover. Resilience becomes a priority. At the same time, Gen X is raising children in a world radically different from the one they grew up in. They are the first generation of parents navigating childhood in the full glare of social media. Every achievement can be posted. Every mistake can be recorded. Every milestone can be compared. For people who grew up when embarrassing moments faded with time, not with screenshots, this shift is profound. Privacy used to be the default. Now, it is something you actively defend. This partly explains why many Gen X parents have a complicated relationship with technology. They remember life before the internet. They remember boredom. They remember long afternoons where entertainment had to be invented, not streamed. At the same time, they are digitally literate. They adapted to email, smartphones, and social platforms as adults. They are more comfortable with technology than many of their boomer parents, but often more skeptical of it than their Gen Z children. So when they set screen limits, it often comes from lived experience rather than abstract fear. They are not rejecting technology outright. They are questioning its cost. They are asking whether constant connectivity erodes attention, privacy, or mental health. In this way, they straddle two eries. Many Gen X parents are also part of what sociologists call the sandwich generation. They are caring for aging parents while raising children of their own, navigating career plateaus, economic pressure, and shifting social norms, translating between generations that sometimes misunderstand each other. Their parents may think, "You're too soft. We'll let you figure it out." Their children may think, "You're too strict. Why can't I have more freedom?" In the middle stands a Gen X parent trying to integrate two philosophies. They want to preserve the independence that shaped them, not overcorrecting so their children cannot cope, but also providing what they sometimes lacked: emotional availability, explicit affirmation, and reassurance that someone is paying attention. One interesting trait often noted about Gen X is their relative indifference to external validation. Growing up with less oversight meant they developed internal compasses. They learned to self-evaluate. Did not grow up in a culture saturated with curated online identities and constant feedback loops. That internal orientation shows up in their parenting. They are often less concerned with meeting every trending standard. They are less likely to chase the newest parenting ideology simply because it is popular. they measure their success against their own memories of childhood. Breaking a cycle is rarely clean. You keep some pieces, you discard others, you experiment, you adjust. Gen X has never been particularly invested in fitting neatly into categories. They were labeled cynical, skeptical, independent, self-reliant. As parents, those traits do not disappear. They become tools. Skepticism turns into critical thinking about trends. Independence turns into encouragement of autonomy. Self-reliance becomes a model for resilience. And cynicism, at its best, becomes realism. A refusal to sugarcoat the world paired with a commitment to prepare children for it. The paradox remains. The generation that roamed unsupervised is now accused of being too involved. But involvement, for many of them, is not about control. It is about presence. It is about making sure their children do not confuse independence with invisibility. In the end, Gen X parenting may be less about overcorrection and more about integration. It is an attempt to blend toughness with tenderness. To combine, figure it out with I'm here. To raise children who feel both capable and cared for. That balance is difficult. It resists simple labels. But perhaps that complexity is exactly what you would expect from a generation that grew up navigating empty houses, uncertain economies, analog childhoods, and digital adulthoods. They learned early that life does not come with constant supervision. Now, as parents, they are trying to offer something slightly different, not constant supervision, but consistent support. And maybe that is the quiet evolution.